like people, horses have off days. And by looking at them before they actually get on the racetrack, you get an initial impression of which way they're leaning.
This is going to sound crazy, but for me, it's intellectual stimulation.
Class is now in session. It's time for Night School. Here are your hosts.
Welcome to Night School, the national online fan education program, now in our 8th season, and we hit the half-mile pole of the 2018 season, week 5 of 10. I'm Jeremy Plonk from Horse Player Now, as we talk about topics that are in the minds of horse players and handicappers out there, try to teach the game and milk in some current events and work things around the horn with our panel of experts tonight that includes Bob Neumeier, the Dean, Jerry Shottenkirk, and Brian W. Spencer. Kaiten Bradar is on vacation this week. It seems like she's always working, so a well-earned vacation for Miss Bradar. But a guy who never takes a day off is Bob Neumeier. Neumie, welcome in.
How you doing? I'm sure Kaiten is, as a member of the Audubon Society, is bird watching somewhere. Maybe the ruby-throated hummingbird is high on her list. But yes, indeed, deserving of time off because, man alive, I mean, 7 days a week, 48 weeks a year. She deserves a respite after that crazy weekend we saw in racing. It deserves a lot of talk and a lot of look-see and a lot of wondering and a lot of questions that need to be answered or at least talked about.
Yeah, you get post-Triple Crown and pre-Saratoga Del Mar, and you think things would be quiet, but we had quite a newsworthy weekend, and we'll get into those topics shortly. Joining us tonight, not just in the live chat talking to the fans, but with us here in body and mind and voice, Mr. Jerry Shottenkirk. Jerry, welcome in.
Well, it's great to be back. I missed you a couple months, and it's just nice to be back with the boys and chewing a little fat about horse racing. Looking forward to it.
We'll do that and more tonight. And also, Brian W. Spencer, good evening to you.
Yeah, thanks, and glad to be back at it again. Always have a lot of fun in the live chats. I know we had, for some of the listeners who came in last month, had a couple of sign-up issues. Hopefully, we'll all get around those again this time around. I know Jerry and I really enjoy getting to chat as we premiere the live episode, so I'm looking forward to that again tonight. And you did mention that what is supposed to be some downtime between the Triple Crown and Del Mar and Saratoga, not quite. Basically woke up to an email from Bob Neumeier, and he is raring to go. So I'm here for it.
Yeah, Neumie gets excited about the racing game, and we're going to hear some of that in just a few minutes. As Brian mentioned, if you want to take part in the live chat, you can log in using a Spreaker account. It's free to set up. Just click on the show title on the Spreaker console that you're listening to right now. That'll take you into the live comments and chat area. You can set up a Spreaker account for free or log in using your existing Twitter or Facebook handles and take part in the chat with fans around the country, as well as Brian and Jerry in the live chat each Tuesday night. Again, a live premiere the second Tuesday of every month, and then you can catch all of the night schools in our archive, hundreds of them for you over the years, horseplayernow.com, in the archive section of Night School, all the past topics. We had something happen this weekend that has been talked about before, but I'm not so sure in such a glaring example. That was the Dwyer Stakes on the big Belmont card on Saturday afternoon. If you saw the betting coming into the Dwyer and through the running of the race, you saw a massive odds drop from 6-1 at post time to 5-1 just before the gate sprang, to 5-2 by the time he hit the wire, and Firenze Fire was the horse in question, and the wagering on him certainly raised a lot of eyebrows as he ran off and won like an international good thing. The perception and the optics, not good. Anytime you see a massive odds drop during the running of a race, people get suspicious. There are some technical reasons why the odds drop after the start of a race, because you can bet up until the point that the starting gate opens. So there's going to be a natural last click of the odds once a race starts. But for that drastic of a drop, I've seen it estimated anywhere from $40,000 to about $60,000 had to be bet on the nose of Firenze Fire in the last click in order for that sort of odds drop to happen. Bob Neumeier, your first reaction when you saw that and just the visceral feelings that it gave you?
Well, I think that most of us that are players are keenly aware of the term we call value, and that is the odds as we see them on the board. And do they compare favorably to the the horse's past performances. And I think that's really the only way we can really play is if we think we're getting a good bang for our buck. In this particular case, Jeremy, we had a situation where I looked at a horse, his past performances, and clearly he's sometimes in, he's sometimes out. I thought the morning line in Frenzy Fire's case of 5 or 6 to 1 was fair. I thought that was about where he deserved to be. And as they went into the gate for that particular race, he was about 5 to 1. Well, a minute and 33 seconds later, he's under the wire laughing with a 9-length victory out of nowhere and pays not 5 to 1, not 6 to 1, but 5 to 2. So how does this happen? Does Naira, who puts on the show, do they have a responsibility now to go back and tell us exactly what happened? Is this the computer boys rushing in, making a bet 30 seconds before post time? I mean, for New York to drive a price from 5 or 6 to 1 to 5 to 2 takes a win bet of what? 40,000, 30,000, 50,000? Mm-hmm. And this also begs the question of the trainer, who's also under fire here, whether he likes it or not, fair or not. The horse and everything about it. It just stinks. It reeks of foul play, and somehow, some way, racing's got to avoid this type of situation. And if not, they've got to be very, very concerned about it and be fair to the public. That would be my attitude about it.
The optics certainly not good, Jerry, and you've been around a long time and have seen, a lot of racing. Do you look at it as your first instinct as a veteran of the game? Is your first instinct that something's up?
Well, I would think so. When you're looking at a track like Belmont Park that, has such a change in odds that close to post time. Now, being one who, I watch races from New Mexico, Louisiana, Iowa, Nebraska, you name it, I watch it.
Right.
And it's nothing to see a horse go, the odds change a lot, when the horses come out. But that's basically because there's not a great deal of money in a lot of those pools. Different story in New York, and I think Neumeier has a good point there. That's a real big change in odds.
And Brian, what about you? I mean, your first gut reaction to just put your fan hat on as much as an industry hat. What do you think when you see that?
They're kind of the same hat in this sense, because on one hand, it seems completely unacceptable. On the other hand, I understand how processing all of those wagers from different hubs does work. But at the same time, I almost feel, and maybe I wish I had a better answer for a program like this, but I almost feel helpless about it. I mean, what are the other options? Do we lock wagering at 1 minute to post? Okay, the exact same thing happens, and it's too late to change your wager. You're just going to change the timing when that happens. And I mean, I would love for there to be a good answer. Is there a way that we can somehow get these technologies modernized in a way where this can be more instantaneous than having to cycle 60 seconds later after every set of wagers comes in? But it's disheartening. I mean, you put $100 on that horse's nose and you think you're getting 600 back, and you wind up getting 250 and change less than that. I mean, I don't want to say it feels like theft to the player. It's obviously not. I don't think there's anything particularly criminal happening in that, but it's not a good look is what it comes down to, and it's not fair to the players. I wish I had the answer, but I mean, that's got to be a gut punch if that's a horse that you really liked and a horse that you tried to build your day around, secured a lot of your bankroll for, like we always tell people to do. You got hosed on it if that were the case.
Yeah, and the reason I started this topic out by saying, what's your gut reaction, what's your feelings about it, is because I wanted to see if seasoned people who have been around the game had the same feeling that Joe Public has, or even a newbie to the game, like, hey, that doesn't feel right. And I think we're all in agreement. Right, wrong, indifferent, however this went down, it doesn't feel right. So, what do we do about it? And there we come to the next step of this conversation. I mean, what kind of steps can be taken? We look at the big batch wagering on computers, and most people, we haven't seen any evidential proof this is what has happened. I know that Bill Finley speculated that may have been what happened in the Thoroughbred Daily News. I read his piece, but we haven't seen anything. And like Neumeier saying, without NYRA coming forward and talking about where the wagers came from, was there a large sum, a $40,000 sum, a $60,000 sum that came in from a particular place, and when did it come in? Without knowing that, the question becomes, it's probably, or the assumption becomes, it's probably, one of the batch wagering big computer syndicate types. And for folks that aren't too in tune with what that is there are people who have computer programs that are set to make a wager based on particular odds at post time or right before the horses leave the starting gate. And they're large sum wagers, a lot of them living on the rebates based on how much volume they play. They make their plays at the end of a pool like this. Do we keep batch wagering in the game? Do we keep the computer-generated wagering in the game? There is a camp out there that says it's not good for the game and it shouldn't be allowed. Neumeier, where do you stand on that part of it? Are you okay with large batch wagering?
Well, look, it's currently, I would like to read or hear NYRA's reaction to this. And I'm sure they will say that, look, offshore wagering is now a big part of our business. We do have individual so-called whale players or computer guys that often show up at the last minute and really are agenda handle. So we actually welcome these guys because they bet with us and they drive up our handle and it's good for business. Okay, I get that. But for every, I want to say average Joe because I hate using that expression, but for every player that's out there who's working hard and trying hard and handicapping and looking at odds, it's an affront to them. It really is. And I think it's a matter of perception. And what is perception? Well, perception can be reality in some cases. And in this case, the perception here, as you say, Jeremy, at the top, that it's a bad look. Yeah, the perception is there's a conspiracy here. What's the conspiracy? The trainer's a crook, the jockey's a crook, that the trainer knew this horse was going to win and suddenly whispered in the ear of one of his buddies that, hey, bet all you want because, this horse is going to win for fun, and he does. And he runs through off the screen. He runs a great time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as that noted philosopher Terrell Owens once said, "If it looks like a rat and smells like a rat and looks like a rat, is it still a rat?" I love that.
When you're quoting T.O., we know that we're reaching in to try to come up with an explanation for this. Jerry, what do you think about the computer batch betting? Is it something where you would rather see, everybody kind of playing on the same field, or in this technology era, are you okay with it?
Well, I don't know what you could do about it. As long as the windows are open and all is fair, I guess. But I mean, it's really disheartening. For once, I'd like to bet a horse at 5-2 and have him come across the wire and pay 6-1. Huh? It's always the other way around. And it's what that does. All of that batch betting and such is it just kills odds at a lot of tracks that especially if a horse is favored anyway, and you think you might be getting a horse at 8-5 at Gulfstream, and they let him out of the gate, and the thing's 3-5. Well, it's fine. You win if the horse wins, you get your pay and such. But I mean, you're not. If you know that horse is going to be 3-5, you're not playing it probably.
And Brian, what about you?
I think it's a tough thing because I don't know what the exact figures are as far as how many what let's say what percentage of these pools are driven by these kind of computer generated batch wagers that are scouring all types of pools for overlays based on what their expected payoff should be. But I think the thing it comes back to for me is, especially when we're talking on a program like Night School and we're talking about all the things that we've tried to do at a place like Horse Player now, and that's bring new people into the game. And how do you explain that to somebody? Somebody who shows up at this race and for whatever reason likes this horse, and you can tell them to wait to bet till the last minute. Fine, they've learned that lesson, but you can't explain that to somebody. And why on earth is somebody who we're trying to turn into a regular bettor, they can go make their bet on a sporting event and they get their fixed price. I know we don't deal in fixed prices in horse racing, but I think that in the biggest picture, I don't want to obviously shortchange our regular players who are getting just as crushed by that kind of phenomenon as anybody else, but it certainly has to limit, as Neumeier said, the perception can become the reality. How do you explain that to somebody who's trying to get into the game and, they're loading in the gate and you're standing next to your new friend at the racetrack saying, hey, you're going to get $12 back. And then all of a sudden they're celebrating about their $12 and you have to explain that it's now $7. It's a bad look. And I want, like I said in the first kind of thing we talked about here, is I don't know what the answer is, but I think that it's certainly a roadblock for new players in the game. It's a discouraging thing for regular players in the game who are already having, the people who don't have the money to live off of the rebates, which is a good majority, obviously, of horse players. Those are the things. It's tough enough to beat this game. Those are the kind of things that if you loved that horse, you can't get past the fact that you got hosed this weekend, maybe on your day maker, so to speak. So I just think it's a negative all around, and I want there to be an answer. And maybe there's somebody who's, technologically savvier than me or who has a better idea of how these things kind of work, where you could come up with a solution that we could propose to racetracks or to, racing commissions. But it's not a good look. It's not fair. And it just doesn't do anybody good, I think, except for the people who are living off of the rebates, who are getting the last laugh. They don't care if the horse pays $7 in the long run over the course of a year. When you're churning that much handle through programs like that, that doesn't hurt them. It hurts everybody else.
Couple points.
So that's just one issue, Brian. Let me just interject here, Jeremy. One quick thing, a thought that I had about this being one in a laundry list of abuses that us poor course players have to deal with every day. And why do we do it? Why do we bet $11 billion a year? Because we love the game. We love it. We enjoy it. It's a challenge. It's all of that stuff. But I think that management and racetrack aficionados take advantage of this. And the reason why I say that is because of stuff that has gone on in this industry for forever, really. And that is, willy-nilly medication rules from state to state. Stewards' rulings that vary from state to state, lousy food, parking charges, horses that win that we can't even explain. As the late Woody Stevens once said, one way to win a race and 20,000 ways to lose them. He's right about that. So the game is tough enough as it is. The parimutuel system, that of takeout, is one we have to try and buck. So when we look at an odds board, we say, well, I think maybe I can make a play here, and maybe I can win. Good luck. And maybe it'll come in. And then to have it come in and pay that is just another example of how we are abused. Yet we continue to take it time in, time out, no matter what the situation is. Why? Because we love it. Because it's in our blood. We want to do it. But we also want a fair playing field. And we yearn for this. I don't know if it'll ever happen in my lifetime, probably not. But I just hope and pray that there are executives or people in the world that are trying to get, a nationalized way to medicate horses and to make it all legal and to have stewards have on the same page as California and New York, and just a few of the examples of things that need to be done, I think, to keep the game on a level playing field. I think that's what we all want.
Well, there's some talk about federal oversight with medications and things like that could be the precursor. If something like that were to come down, judicially, that could change the face of the racing game and uniform a lot more of these kind of policies. With the negative of you become a national organization that goes with it, with federal oversight and all the good and bad that can go with that, and the politics that goes along with it. To the exact point of this situation with Firenze Fire and the Dwyer on Saturday, and these late wagers and the batch wagers, as we're calling with the computers, the one thing I think you really have to keep in mind, I think, is if someone is willing to gamble $40,000 at the last minute on Firenze Fire, the problem is they got to be right. You know, there are plenty of times where people make large late wagers and they're wrong. The one thing that we can't have is cancellation of wagers. And so there, once upon a time, if you had a ticket that was more than, I want to say, about $100 walking around the track, you couldn't go back and just walk up and cancel the ticket at any point in time when you wanted to, because they feared pool manipulation. I think rules and organizations have gotten a little lax with that because they want to keep the big bettors happy. I think you cannot have massive cancellation of tickets because that does manipulate the pools. What we don't know here, let's say there was a big bet all along on Mendelssohn to drive the price down on him to bring the price up on Firenze Fire so he stays 6-1 throughout all the betting, and then they peeled the money off of Mendelssohn and put it on Firenze Fire. That to me would be far more egregious than just a straight bet at the end. I don't know that that's happened, but we do know we've seen some pool manipulation and some big cancellation of tickets over the past couple years, and that is something that they really have to get a grip on because you can't let that happen. That is absolutely manipulating the pool and the odds, and you'll see that some at the smaller tracks, but you'll even see it at the big-time levels. Now, with conditional wagering, I made 3 conditional wagers on Saturday, none of which were at Belmont Park, but I made 3 conditional wagers with my ADW Express Bet where I put in my wager for the race, and I say this horse has to be 4-1 or more at 0 minutes to post, or cancel the bet. So it holds the bet, doesn't put it in the system until then. I like that for a horse player. But I don't know how much different that is than some of what the batch wagers are doing. But some of these computer programs have direct access to the pools, and that money is going straight in. And that access to the pools is where you get into some of the legal questions and what's fair and unfair of not going through the direct parimutuel process and the time that it takes to process. That's different than a conditional wager that, say, you and I or someone out there listening might make. But I think conditional wagering is a good thing. But in this case, conditional wagering would have done you no good. If my conditional wager was Firenze Fire at 5-1 at 0 minutes to post, the bet was made. He went off 5-2, so it wouldn't have even saved you in this situation. And as Brian mentioned, stopping the pools at 0 minutes to post or right at post time would not solve a problem like this. The batch wager would just be set to go as late as it possibly can. They've tried to do this in the past. If you recall, after the 2002 Breeders' Cup at Arlington, the Fix 6, where the Pick 6 was hit in a crooked manner, the folks with the tote company, they paid their price for it legally, and the racing industry paid its price for it. After that, in 2002, all of the big tracks in the country went to closing their pools at post time to try to avoid the public perception. They claimed that it hurt handle. After a little bit of time, everybody just kind of got over it and said, I'd like to bet up until they go to the starting gate, and it went away. You know, Neumeier, if they try to do a fix for something like this, how long do they stick with it until they just go back to what the public's used to?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm following a lot of this stuff, Jeremy, and I followed this congressional hearing about this, what I think is a decent concept, and that is this Horseman's Integrity Act, which, by the way, will never fly because of the Lasix issue. We can talk about that till we're blue in the face. Whether it's a good thing for the horse or it's a good thing for people that same-day Lasix be administered, and that's the whole topic for another day. Back in the old days, I used to be, one of my tricks was to be a chartist, and a chartist is one, for example, let's say that I love the one in the first race, and the second race is 2-year-olds, and the first time starters, and I have no idea. So the chartist does is he'll do will pays of 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, and so on down the line. And I'll write down what these will pays will be for all of these horses with the idea that there will be some money that either that one is live or dead based on money that's in there. Well, now this is almost obsolete because the late money is so strong now that, my will pay might pay supposed to pay $30, and if the one wins and the one won suddenly is $18, well, what good does that do me? It doesn't do the chart, so it's obsolete. I mean, well, I'm wasting my time now to get involved in that. But that's what we're talking about with late wagers. That Dwyer was weird in a lot of different ways, not just the Frenzy Fire thing. I mean, if you really watch the odds closely, Mendelssohn was clobbered in the doubles. Rugby Man was 5-1. Touch to 9-2, touch to 4-1, touch to 7-2. Kind of got squeezed at the start, got a bad start, moved a little bit green, made a big middle move, and flattened out from there. Mendelssohn, I forgot about Nobilindi, he was out there as well. And now Forense Fire, who hadn't won a race in a long time, suddenly without warning wins off the screen. And people just shake their head. I mean, they're just scratching their head. If you like Forense Fire, God bless you. But instead of getting, 5 or 6 to win, you get 5%. So hey, that's the way it goes. But I mean, it's disheartening and all of that stuff. And again, I get back to the fact that it's just another case of things that get in the way of us trying to be, to keep our head above water and make a few bucks or break even and do whatever we have to do to kind of keep us alive. Just another example of, how they're screwing us.
and a layer that makes this particular situation even more outwardly obvious to people and incensing them is that, trainer Jason Service had been hitting at 50% at Belmont Park at the meet over the last, during the course of the last 60 days, as well as at Monmouth Park. The guy is shooting fish in a barrel right now, and he's always been a high percentage trainer, 20 to 25%. But anytime someone's hitting 50% over a 60-day span, the antennae are just going to go up. Right or wrong, it just doesn't seem this worldly, Brian. I mean, when a trainer is going that well, you just start to get suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm probably one of the, wrong people to talk to if people want me to kind of jump on the there's definitely something wrong bandwagon. I get why people do it. I'm not discounting anybody's feelings about it. But, especially when I'd see this stuff at fairgrounds in, limited samples all the time. People, I think there are ebbs and flows. I think that especially when we're talking about Mr. Service, we're talking about, a guy who's not jumping from, winning 1 in 15 races to winning 1 in 2. Talking about a guy who's basically, at least to my eyes from following along with a lot of the, conversations that come up about his recent streak that we've seen on Twitter and other kind of sites where people are talking about it is a lot of these horses I think are very well meant, and I think that for a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's that's the starting point. Oh, they're very well meant, but. And then it jumps into why it's not possible. See, for me, that's the end of it for most of these things. You'll see Tom Amoss rattle off a streak of, 20 for 40 at times or something, maybe not quite that extreme. But, you'll see these guys go on really hot streaks, and it's because they're guys who put their horses where they belong. Now, does that necessarily mean that, it's just as simple as, oh, well, if everybody could read a condition book, they'd all be batting 50%? Obviously, that's where the suspicion comes in. But, I'm probably the wrong person to talk to about that because I don't have much of an issue with it. I think his horses have been well spotted. Granted, some of them have been running a lot better than you might expect, but sometimes the stars align and horses end up in the right spots when they're feeling good and they're coming up to races well, and it can just be that simple. And I think that's where it's at for me.
We'll talk plenty more about the Saratoga and Del Mar meets that are to come here in the coming weeks on Night School when we return. We talked about how hot Jason Service has been of late. He's hit 23% at Saratoga over the last 3 years. That's not easy to do. One of the highest percentages, even higher than Todd Pletcher and higher than Chad Brown. So we'll talk about Saratoga and Del Mar when we come back.
And we'll be right back with more Night School.
Some folks folks like to bet on the horses. Some like to bet on the games. Some folks like to bet on their phone. And some like to bet from their suite. So what's your best bet? All of the above. No matter how you like to bet, Remington Park is your best bet yet. With world-class horse racing, OKC's newest casino, and online suite booking now available. Remington Park, it's your best bet yet.
Hey, what's going on? Mikey here, and I'm going to tell you about an offer from my good friends at ExpressBet. Let's be honest. We know you love playing the races, but you can't always make it to the track. Sometimes life just gets in the way of a good bet. Well, what if I told you about a place where you never miss a bet and you start with house money? You'd say I'm crazy, right? Well, not at ExpressBet. Your first $100 are on them. That's right. Sign up with expressbet.com using promo code XBRadio, bet $100, and they'll deposit $100 back into your account the very next day. Hey, plus you could get an extra $25 if you use Express Fund Direct Deposit. You see what I mean? House money for betting the races. It's that easy. Check it out at expressbet.com to learn more. And don't forget to sign up with promo code XBRadio. You're gonna love it. And that's a Mikey guarantee. Must be 18 years or older and 21 years old in certain states to open an account with ExpressBet and reside in a state where such activity is legal. Void where prohibited. National Gambling Support Line 800-522-4700.
Next on FAQ 60, the morning line. The morning line odds are not a prediction of each horse's probability of winning a race. Rather, they're a prediction of how the public will bet the race. Once betting begins, the morning line odds are replaced with the actual odds. There are two ways you can use morning line odds to your advantage. First, the morning line helps a horse player determine overlay or underlay values. If a horse's current odds are over the projected morning line odds, that's an overlay, and it can be a great value bet. Second, morning line odds are significant to players making multi-race bets like the Daily Double and Pick 4. Those early morning line projections often attract the most money in the multi-race pools, which decreases your potential payoff. This FAQ 60 is presented by AQHA Racing and Horse Player Now. For more, go to AQHARacing.com.
Pick, bet, and cheer on live racing from Woodbine and Mohawk Park. Thoroughbred and harness action. The wagers are just the beginning. Watch award-winning broadcasts covering both breeds, incredible battles contested over the most unique grass course in North America. Experience the full fields with over 130 thoroughbred and 160 live harness days. Get access to free handicapping material and join the ranks of Woodbine and Mohawk Park players from all over the globe. For more information, visit woodbine.com.
Welcome back to our Knights at the Round Table.
Welcome back to Night School, Season 8, our 5th of 10 lessons in the 2018 season. I'm Jeremy Plonk from Horse Player Now. The panel reconvenes after a timeout. Bob Neumeier, Brian W. Spencer, and the Dean, Jerry Shottenkirk with me. Guys, we are just, a little over a week or two away from the start at Saratoga, then Del Mar shortly thereafter. It's the summer boutique season, and this is when everybody, I think, gets re-energized after the Triple Crown, and why not? The racing is great. Neumeier, Saratoga and Del Mar, what are some of the things you're looking forward to?
Well, two things that stick out in my mind, Jeremy. I think that on balance, that the racing is better at Saratoga as long as it doesn't rain. If it rains and they're off the turf, read a book, go to a movie, do whatever you have to do. Don't play the races. Del Mar is a fabulous location. I've been there a few times, and people love the ocean, people love the restaurants, people love the social life. And I think that by and large that both places have good racing. And I also know that a lot of these outfits and these connections really look for those boutique meets, if you will, to try and win races. It doesn't make it any easier. They're typically more competitive. They're typically races that all these guys really want to win. So it's a real challenge for any player to keep their head above water. But like any situation, I think you got to be patient. That's what you got to do. And it's hard because, you're psyched up about the opening of Saratoga and Del Mar. It's a refresher, as you would say. But nevertheless, it's the same race, it's the same kind of mutuals, it's the same doubles and superfectas and what have you that we need to deal with. So let's pump the brakes on the fact that it's a new beginning, because it's really the same kind of stuff when you really think about it.
And there can be some marathon cards, especially at Saratoga, and they run 6 days a week, including Mondays. So, as you said, pumping the brakes can be a good thing, because it seems like a boutique sprint, but it can be quite a grind if you're overplaying. Jerry, Saratoga and Del Mar, some of your early thoughts. Jerry.
Well, I'll tell you, Saratoga is just really, it stands out to me, but for the simple reason that there's such a nice blend of horses there coming from so many different places. You know, Del Mar, of course, it's a great meet, but, you know, we're pretty much used to, you know, seeing the horses right there, and they're basically the same horses that are at Santa Anita. You go to Saratoga, you know, you're getting a blend of the New York horses, Florida, Churchill Downs horses do pretty well there, and of course the Mid-Atlantic horses. So it's really a good blend of different geographical areas of horses going in there, and that, to me, that's what makes it special.
And what about you, Brian? Looking forward to these meets at Saratoga and Del Mar?
Yeah, and you know, I think one of the things that I've found over the course of years, because there was such a time where, you know, I pretty much only played Chicago and Louisiana racing and occasionally Kentucky racing at the, you know, Churchill meet and a little bit at Keeneland. But, you know, over several years, you know, trying to get my feet wet in those meets, I think a lot of it's one of those where, you know, I find that it's more comfortable for me, and perhaps it's less satisfying in, you know, the brag department if I get something right. But I approach these two meets in a lot of ways as sort of almost kind of a team attack, so to speak. You know, I found some people that, you know, I really trust who understand these meets. Not to toot one of our own guys' horns, but Brian Natto, very good at Saratoga, and he's a guy I look to and lean heavily on. And I don't think there's anything wrong, especially in these races where, you know, people show up, they want to win these races. My assumption is generally that horses are going to be set to run, much in the way they would be when they're coming back at, you know, Keeneland off of a little bit of a layoff. I think that people want to win these kinds of races, and there's, you know, the wagers pay the same if you win them, whether you did it all by yourself or whether you synthesized opinions with a couple of other people you trust. And I think that with as hard as these races are, and as competitive as they are, and as big as the fields can be, and as just difficult as it is, even more so than just most racing days throughout the course of the year, I think that for me it's been very beneficial in the past several years to you know, kind of create my own team of people. And a lot of them probably don't even know they're on my team, but they've done me a lot of help over the years, and I think that's important. Find the people you trust and use that to not make your mind up for you, but perhaps supplement your opinion. You know, I think that that's been beneficial to me, and I've seen a lot of other people kind of pool resources and handicapping resources as well, and kind of toss thoughts off of each other and come up with some really nice hits. I think that it's maybe more advantageous to do that at these kinds of meets where it's so tough to win to begin with than maybe it would be throughout the rest of the year.
Couple numbers to underlie the toughness of these meets. Favorites over the last 3 years at Saratoga have won 32%. You'll see nationally 37, 38% winning favorites, so that number is down well below par, as is Del Mar, 32% winning favorites at both of these meets. And on the turf, even more so, Del Mar favorites the last 3 years on the turf have only won at 28% on the grass, and at Saratoga, 30% on the grass. So if you're looking to, you know, upend some favorites, Del Mar's turf, Saratoga's turf, not bad places to look, but those races generally draw the larger fields. They're tougher to handicap, and with that menagerie of horses coming from different circuits that you're talking about with Saratoga, Brian's tip to kind of put together your own public handicapping team, if you will, who can you rely on for horses in these different regions and areas, might really help. Because say you're a NYRA bettor year-round, that's great, but you don't really know these horses that are now coming in from Saratoga or coming in from, say, the Mid-Atlantic or coming in from Churchill Downs at Kentucky. So, follow some public handicappers that you know and trust, and like Brian said, maybe assemble a bit of a team there. Another one for me as far as a handicapping angle goes at Del Mar is horse for course. It is the same horses that we see running at Santa Anita. They have a ship and win program that's provided a decent number of starters, but we're talking in the dozens of starters that come in for the meet. It doesn't make a tremendous impact on the horse colony out there. You can find, Mark Cassey, Tom Proctor will bring some horses west, Christophe Clement, and they do well when they go to Del Mar. But Del Mar is different than Santa Anita and certainly different than Los Alamitos on the Southern California circuit in that horses either like it or they don't. The footing is different, and whether it's the beach tides and all of the theories that go along with that, horse for course, I think, is the most important angle on the Del Mar main track. If you find a horse who's run well over that track in the past, you might get them to wake up on their Santa Anita form and workouts. If they're working well over the racetrack, I think that's a good angle too.
Jeremy, there's a tourist impact here too. And I think that most people look at Saratoga and Del Mar as a bit of a holiday. It is a refresher for everybody, no doubt about that. But what happens when you deal with more or less a tourist crowd, two things. Number one is they gravitate towards names they know. New York, over the years, Angel Cordero, then Jerry Bailey. Now, John Velasquez or Javier Castellano, Del Mar. It's now Kent DeSormo or Flavian Pratt. And so these are the people that these tourist bettors know. They know Todd Pletcher. They know Bob Baffert. They're going to get bet anyway. But they're really going to get bet at these Saratoga and Del Mar meets because people just want to back them because they know who they are. And on this show, I always stress patience. And I firmly believe that, whether it's, starting this January 1 through December 31 and not looking at every day like it's my last day on earth to bet. Because if I show up at Saratoga or I show up at Del Mar, I don't want to just unleash my wallet. I call it the 5:30 p.m. curse, where if I'm out $200, man, I got to go crazy in the last race because it's my one day because I'm a tourist and I need to get out. So I stress patience at all times, no matter what the situation is. So tourists are an angle at Saratoga Del Mar, and you got to beware of overbet famous jockeys, trainers, etc.
And that could play into that winning favorites being much below the national par. A good solid 4 to 5% below the national par. I thought so. I put some stats together for ExpressBet a week or so ago about these upcoming meets, and I was kind of fascinated to see at Del Mar over the last 3 years, there's not a single trainer with a significant number of starters. There's not a single trainer hitting 20% at Del Mar over the last 3 years. The wealth has been spread out. Bob Baffert is just under 20, Peter Miller at 19, but guys like Mike McCarthy, Steve Miotti, Richard Baltus in the 18-19% range. That's the creme de la creme at Del Mar. You just don't see the super trainer kind of numbers at Del Mar for whatever reason. And then when you get to Saratoga, here's some interesting ones. Danny Gargan, 24%. Jason Service, 23% we talked about. Charlie Baker, 28% at Saratoga over the last 3 years. This is for guys with 75 or more starters, so a significant number of outings. There's 5, 6, 7 trainers up over 20% at Saratoga, so whatever the reason, I think it might have a little bit to do with that horse for course at Del Mar, and you just don't have a barn full of Del Mar horses when you get down there. You have some that can handle it, but not all. But it's an interesting take. What are some of the other things you guys are looking for at these particular meets? Let's go to Brian. Anything specific to a major stakes race or a category of horses that you're looking for? Say the 2-year-olds or the Travers types horses. Any kind of insight there you can provide for the fans?
For my handicapping style and the things that have generally benefited me in years past, I think that a lot of what I look forward to are kind of those horses very early in the meet, because I think that a lot of people want to come and they want to play Saratoga, they want to play Del Mar. I'm going to be focusing a lot of my energy on Del Mar this summer, and for me, a lot of that comes to putting in the work beforehand, looking at the tail end of the Santa Anita Bonita meet, at the Los Alamitos meet, to try to get an idea of horses who could be sitting on a good one, especially from a trip note perspective. Whereas, if once you get into the thick of the Del Mar meet, you've got horses running back, and I think that you get more eyes on those horses from people who are playing it. People are more likely to see those troubled trips. So for me, it's always kind of been like this, moving from one meet to another. Early on in years past, in the Hawthorne meet, at the end of the Arlington meet, that was the best chance to make money that first week or two there. And I think that doing some legwork in advance, getting some horses that you think might be sitting on good races immediately into the Del Mar meet or the Saratoga meet, especially from a trip perspective, is where I'm really going to try to make my money, is going to be in those first 2 weeks of the meet, and then kind of figure out where I want to go from there.
Jerry, what about you?
Well, I'll tell you, with both places, I don't know if it really helps me handicapping or making money wise, but just taking a look at the 2-year-olds, the maiden races, and then if they go into a stakes race or an allowance, it's really kind of interesting to watch the development of horses that are just now going to be starting, because there's been 2-year-old racing for a few months now, but the horses we see next year that are the Derby hopefuls and stuff, that most of them haven't started yet, but now they probably will. You're looking at Del Mar and Saratoga, so you'll look at promising horses. You'll look at the work tabs and stuff. I think it's just an added dimension that takes away from the everyday. I mean, you're really looking at horses that you could be seeing 7 or 8 months from now, and you can look back and say, yeah, saw that one, knew that one was coming up to a big race early on. So that kind of stuff. That's what I enjoy most about those.
It's almost like following recruiting. You're going to see tomorrow's stuff.
It's an added dimension, but I think you'll go broke betting 2-year-olds. I really do.
Yeah.
Because look,
that's
for every good,
I preface that
for every good pedigree, for every good workout, for all of that stuff, people know this stuff now. I mean, people are so sophisticated with computers, and they know the mothers and the second dams, and Violence is a great first-time starter as a sprinter, and Catharos, whatever his name is really fast early, too. People know this stuff now. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I tend to look at it myself, and, hey, listen, this is just me. I mean, you can do whatever you want. But, I mean, I tend to, and why I stress patience is when I see a 2-year-old maiden race, yeah, Jerry, I think it's glamorous. I think you might see a Derby horse unveiled there, and it's great. It's fun to look at. It's fun to watch. But damn it, I don't really want to bet on it, to be honest with you, because I got no clue.
No, well, that's what I was saying. I don't know how much it helps making money-wise, but, just the sport part of it, but, maybe not as much in the gambling aspect, but watching the development of the horses that, that's kind of the way I see it.
And the tote board's going to say a lot in those 2-year-old races, who's getting bet, who isn't, and bring Brian back in on this, because we had a question submitted to us from C. Smith on Twitter about overlays and underlays, and one of the topics that we wanted to try to touch on a little bit in this night school is identifying those overlays and underlays, what they are, and how to strike with them. Brian, your thoughts on that to follow up on C. Smith's question?
I think that on one hand, I think that the idea of overlays and underlays just as a category sounds very simple. An overlay, just to get definitions out of the way, an overlay is essentially when a horse is offering a better price on the board, say 8-1, than what you believe their realistic chances of winning are. So if you've figured out that this horse should be 9-2 or 5-1, an overlay is a horse that's offering a better price than they should based on their reasonable chances of winning the race. An underlay is the opposite, offering too short of a price. Now, I think that there's a sort of sense of gut feelings that goes into it. You can look at a horse and you can just say, well, wow, that horse shouldn't be 8 or 10-1. But I think in practice, really putting in the work to identify overlays and underlays, at least for me, you've got to have a starting point, and it actually can be a little bit more complicated than just, wow, that horse is a bigger price than it should be, because the question then is why. And for me, that's figuring out a fair odds line, essentially, on races that I'm very interested in betting, and determining what the horse that I really want to bet should be offering on the board. And, in a lot of ways, you can trust your gut on that. But at the same time, an overlay in one place, by and large, is going to create an underlay in another. And kind of understanding where that money's coming and where it's going can be a little bit tougher, I think, than it sounds at first glance. I think we make it sound a little bit easier when we throw around the word overlay and underlay. But in the end, finding overlays and identifying them properly is one of the biggest keys to having success in racing, because what that's going to do is it's going to say that at least when you're right, you're getting paid at least what you should be getting paid reasonably based on your horse's chances of winning the race, or potentially more. And that's how you pad and build your bankroll. You can't make money betting under overlays over and over, but you need to know what those numbers should be before they can be constituted as an overlay or an underlay. So in a sense, I think it's a little bit more complicated than just simply saying, wow, that's a better number than I expected. How come? Drill down to where that is. And if you really want to put in the work, learn to make a fair odds line. I think that's one of the most beneficial things that I've really ever done in racing, is finding the ability to build a fair odds line that I think really suits my handicapping and really suits the races. And from there, then you can find overlays and identify potential underlays that you want to stay away from a little bit better.
And this brings me to one of my favorite points in teaching people about horse racing and handicapping. It goes back to being a young kid picking up programs as you're walking out of the racetrack, is you can deconstruct this stuff and do it yourself hundreds of times, thousands of times for absolutely free. It doesn't cost you anything to do. Grab some past performances, check out the races, make your fair odds lines, and then check them against the free charts that you get at Equibase or DRF or wherever you get your charts on the track website. See how you do in making a fair odds line. You don't have to be perfect at this right off the bat in doing it. You get a free run of trying to do this often and do it as many times as you can. You leave the racetrack, pick up a simulcast program. It is your absolute best friend. It's got, hundreds of races in it throughout the course of the country. Pick up that simulcast program, try to look at those horses, make a fair odds line, then look at the charts and see what those horses actually went off. You can do all this practice without investing money and losing. You'll find out after a while, hey, I'm pretty good at setting a fair odds line, or maybe I'm not so good at it, and maybe this isn't for me. But you can take this test on your own. And this is like handicapping, deconstructing races. Go get an old program and look at it and try to figure out, who do I think made the lead in this race? How good of a pace handicapper am I? You got 100 races where you can just handicap for pace, and then go back and look at the charts and see, okay, well, about 70% of the time I was right in finding out which horse was going to go towards the front of the pack. These are the ways that you can practice in the game, and like Brian's saying, establishing that ability to set a fair odds line on horses is one of the great tools you can have, but it takes practice. Get out there and practice. I don't think there's any substitute for repetition in this game, Neumeier.
Yeah, I think that in both your cases, you bring up an interesting point, and I think players would be better off if they did not look at the connections, but they just analyzed the horse's possibilities of winning in that race. And yeah, you can make an effort to try and figure out the pace line. That's very important. We all understand that. I think in Monday's case, actually Sunday, the victory ride looked like it was going to be a closer because there was so much speed in the race. And sure enough, some guy, came in late and paid, 90 to 1 or something, whatever it was. I don't know. But hey, listen, I just think that the horse should preclude the name Chad Brown, the name Todd Pletcher, the name John Velasquez, the name the Ortiz brothers. And yet, at Saratoga and Del Mar, it seems to me that people gravitate towards those names that they know, rather than the abilities of a given horse. So I think you're better off served that way. And I always say that as a bettor, I'm going to be wrong more than I'm going to be right. But when I'm right, I want to make up for the 8 or 9 times that I'm wrong. So I can go over the card as good as anybody in the world. But if I'm right about something, or God forbid I'm right twice a day, then I'm going to make some money. If I'm right once a day, I'll probably break even or something. But horse first, connection second.
I think that's good advice for sure. And we talk about practicing in various tracks and picking up that simulcast program and looking around. You might be suddenly doing Louisiana Downs, and you don't know the connections there. So, like Neumeier's saying, take the people out of the equation. Just look at the horse. And when you're practicing your handicapping, just handicap the horse until you get that part of it down pat. Then if you want to get into the nuances of the individuals and the impact that they make on a particular horse or a race or a style, go for it. But you've got to get the basis of handicapping the horse first and foremost. That's going to pull up this segment on Night School. When we come back, Steve Byk will join Brian W. Spencer for a final look at things on this July edition of Night School. Panel, have a great night. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with more Night School.
Strategize, analyze, select. Join Keeneland Select to bet on racing from around the world on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, anytime, anywhere. Featuring the best rewards in racing, free past performances, live video, race replays, and more. Plus, Keeneland Select invests a portion of its profits back into the sport. Join Keeneland Select today and earn a $150 sign-up bonus at KeenelandSelect.com. Dedicated to the sport and dedicated to the players.
Do you want unlimited access to handicapping without exorbitant prices? Then Brisnet.com has you covered with a variety of plans for past performances, pedigree, and raw data. The Brisnet.com Performance Plan offers unlimited PDF past performances for just $75 per month and is available at Brisnet.com/PP. American Produce Records Online puts the pedigrees of nearly 1 million dams and more than 2 million foals at your fingertips, plus sire stats for only $275 per year, and is available at Brisnet.com/APR. The Brisnet.com data plan offers unlimited access to race day data files, perfect for handicappers with their own database or to plug into other people's programs. The data plan is just $125 per month. Visit Brisnet.com for all this information and more, and discover why Brisnet.com is the handicapper's edge.
Catch the buzz. Horseplayer Now's popular handicapping tool returns and puts our handicappers to work for you in a new and improved format in 2018. Team grid picks, feature race analysis, Bob Neumeier's stats and sheets plays, consensus team gimmicks captained by Kate and Bradar, and analysis of 6 major tracks in each issue provided by the Horseplayer Now team. Purchase individual editions or subscribe for the remainder of 2018 and save over 60%. Our eyes, your prize. To learn more about the buzz, view sample reports, and subscribe, visit horseplayernow.com.
I've never experienced anything like it. I thought to myself, this could be today. Why not today? And it was. The horse went from last to first and won by a nose. Winning the NAC changed my life. It never would have happened without TwinSpires.com. I won a Twin Spires qualifying tournament and went on to take the $1 million prize. Play at TwinSpires.com and you could be the next one to hit it big.
Welcome back to our Nights at the Round Table.
Welcome back into Night School. Brian W. Spencer joined again by Steve Byk to close out our show. And Steve, welcome in. And one of the major things that we talked about earlier on tonight's show with our roundtable, Bob Neumeier, a little fired up, and I think rightfully so after what we saw in the Dwyer with that heavy late odds change. And I know that this is something that you have talked about a lot over the course of the years, and I think that this is an area where you've got some expertise that I think that our listeners really might appreciate. If you want to maybe kind of walk us through, how that kind of late odds drop happens, what it means for horse players, and is there anything we can do about it, or are we all just kind of in the same boat where we're just, taking that gut punch, so to speak, when something like that happens?
Well, it's a complex discussion, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. The computer batch bettors, the groups, as they're called euphemistically, they're an evil, and they're also, I suppose, necessary. At this point, it's been almost 20 years since they've gained a meaningful position in the national handle. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25% of the handle on a going basis. They have direct access into the pools, so their bets come in, under the latest possible moments, and they do it with their algorithms that are bringing into line the proper odds. Basically, the algorithms that they write are set up to identify overlays, and it's in the exacta pools. It's virtually in all pools, and the money comes pouring in. And this has been going on. Anybody that's screaming that the sky is falling, this has been going on for years, and it's been discussed. Anybody that this is some sort of a revelation, they either aren't paying attention or they actually don't bet, because everybody that really bets is familiar with this circumstance. There is the exceedingly preposterous people that are trying to conflate Jason Service's strong performance currently, where he's winning everywhere, and there's other people that want to insist, they're not betting after the bell. That's nonsense. We've explained this so many times, Brian, that it becomes just frustrating to explain over and over again the process by which money accrues, the amount of money that comes in the last 3 minutes and in the last minute and in the last flush, and then the way in which that money is reflected in the odds as the race begins, and how the graphics package is always going to be 2 flushes behind. And so it gives the appearance that the odds are changing during the race, but the odds aren't changing. The money is being tabulated from all the various sources. In this particular case, you had a very unusual set of circumstances. And with a horse like Mendelssohn that was so high profile and was going to be in the 4 to 5 range, and anybody that watches the multi-race pools, you saw that Forensic Fire was under 4 to 1 in the doubles and the pick 3 will pays. Andy Serling identifies this all the time for people and says you're going to get a correction here. Whatever horse, in this case, Forensic Fire is 6 to 1, he's going to come down, closer to 7 to 2. The same thing is happening with the algorithms and with the batch bettors. And they've got the number. They know that he should be at least 7 to 2. And if they all send that money in around the same time before the bell, that's what gets you down and cuts the price in half. I mean, we've discussed this just over and over again. There's so many things that contribute to the frustrating optics. Maury Wolf has been talking about this since 2000. He identified the issue, and Paul Matisse comes on with me and tries to explain it to people. I've explained the way the graphics packages are always behind the flushes, 30 seconds, and then at the bell and the final flush, until there's a change in the running order, you don't see the final odds reflected. So it gives people these runaway conspiracy ideas, and it's very hard to counter those, especially in this era with the way the internet is. But the reality exists, and as an industry, we've got to make some hard decisions about perhaps limiting the access to the pools that the groups have. Oaklawn has a cap on it. Peter Berube at Tampa keeps a a certain amount, limits the group's access to their pool. And as an industry, where do you draw the line? If it's creating a negative impression to this extent, and if it's driving casual players or serious players even that don't operate at the highest level, that don't get big level rebates, well, if it's pushing them out of the game, this is a big problem. And then you got to make the decision. The problem is the industry has not wanted to address it because there was, think about it, 20, 22, 24% of the national handle. You want to eliminate that in 2 seconds? I mean, there's ways to counteract the groups, and when they're wrong, when they go in the wrong direction, everybody gets paid very handsomely. People don't talk about this on the back end, but there's plenty of times when combinations that they didn't cover, when they do turn up, you get disproportionately well paid. But the times that people are sensing that you're getting all the value sapped out of the pool, particularly the exactas, that is such a negative that it's something that we've got to figure out. And I don't know the answers now. Maury Wolf has said repeatedly that it's too late, that he thinks it would be impossible to put this genie back in the bottle.
And it would be as you kind of touched on, it would be a seismic shift that would have to be undertaken. We are talking about potentially a quarter of handle on races like this. So very much a kind of conversation that was in the spirit of what we talked about on the roundtable. A lot of something needs to be addressed, but maybe not everybody knows exactly what that answer is just yet. And Steve, we're running a little short on time here at the end of the show, but big boutique meets coming up, Saratoga, Del Mar, and I know you spend a lot of time at Saratoga and covering those races. If you were going to give, say, your most important piece of advice for people who are going to really try to focus on some of their summer dollars at Saratoga, what's the number one place or thing that you would kind of direct people to in order to give them a better chance of being more successful this summer at Saratoga?
First and foremost, I would review prior seasons. I would go and go back to last year and look at the historic charts, utilize the information available on the back end, and get a feel for the meet. There's certainly plenty of handicapping products out there that utilize the historic trends at Saratoga. Every meet is going to be a little different, but for the most part, there are certain themes that absolutely are constant when it comes to Saratoga. The tortoise and hare syndrome, the certain outfits that start fast and get a lot of wins in the first 2 weeks or 17 days, and then less the rest of the meet. Others that start slow or don't send out too many horses and they wait for later on the second half of the meet. And then there's certain outfits that just always win. George Weaver is miraculous. No matter how many years we bring up Dreamweaver, he manages to still come away with 7 to 10 wins and an average mutual of about $18.
It's like the Vicky Oliver of Saratoga.
It's really amazing. Well, to some degree, but George does a tremendous job. There are certain outfits that will pop up every year, and belie a trend. Go back a couple of years ago when Bill Mott was 1 for 32, I think, with first-time starters, and he won with 2 in a row. And so you can't automatically rely on what the perceived apocryphal concepts are. Handicap on a day-to-day basis. Budget yourself. Don't try to come out firing. This isn't like a Breeders' Cup weekend. We say this every year. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And so take your time and wade in and get a feel. And don't get frustrated. Saratoga has a tendency, if you're a multi-race player, it'll only take maybe one good pick for a week to absolutely guarantee a successful season. Maybe even less than that. You kind of meet like a Gulfstream in the winter. At Keeneland, you hit one $4,000 pick four, you're in great shape. So don't get frustrated. Stay the course. Pull back when you're getting beat up. There's 40 days, and that offers you plenty of time to find your spots. But it should be great. Everything is shaping up very, very nicely toward a great summer. It's always fun to be here. Summer a little bit better than others, but I wish everybody the best of luck, whether you're playing Saratoga Del Mar, Ellis Park, anywhere else.
There you go. And yeah, really good advice, especially because at those kind of tracks, it's very easy to get enticed into playing good race after good race. But remember to, as Steve said, pull back when you need to and take your shots when you can, and kind of stick it out when maybe you're on a little bit of a short streak that's not going too well, because as he said, it doesn't take a whole lot to right the ship over the course of a 40-day meet. So this is going to wrap it up for our 5th episode of Night School in the 2018 program. On behalf of Jeremy Plonk, Bob Neumeier, Jerry Shottenkirk, and Steve Byk, I'm Brian W. Spencer from HorsePlayerNow.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back with you again the second Tuesday of every month. That'll be the second Tuesday of August. We'll see you again next time. Thanks for joining us. Good night.